Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we're going to be wrapping up the combine with a review of the offensive linemen. We're going to talk about measurements, we're going to talk about drills, we're going to talk about really what changes on the big board as well. Now, I do want to preface this with that I have not updated my big board since wide receiver drills, so I do not have this re-ranked. I don't have players where I expect them to land, but that is where I'm at on it. So we're going to take a look at that a couple times, look at some of the numbers, but let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first guy I want to talk about is Brandon Coleman. Ended up being the fastest guy in the 40 from my big board, ran a sub 5-second time, really good. And, I kind of see him as maybe more of like a late round prospect heading into this. But now that's kind of changed because you're looking at it, and before it's like, okay, I don't really know if he's going to grow a ton. I don't know if he's going to really figure it all out. He's got decent size to go with that. But now you're looking at the hand size, you're looking at the arms, the wingspan. I mean, I'm going to be straight with you guys. These are tackle numbers. Like, I have him as an offensive guard, but I think teams are going to look at him and say, why can't this guy play tackle? He has a 7-foot wingspan, and he performed really well in the drills. I mean, he had one of the best 10-yard splits, like I said, fastest 40 of all my guys. Really blew me out of the water there. And he's someone I'm going to have to absolutely change my evaluation on. Going to be a riser on my board for sure. Now, my next guy. Let's talk about Cooper Beebe a little bit. I think things are kind of mixed for him because he came in with smaller hands. I believe they were around 9 inches or so, which is okay. I mean, you could survive with it, but not really ideal measurements, right? Came in with 31.5-inch arms, 78-foot wingspan, 78-inch wingspan. 78 foot would be insane. But, I think he made up for a lot of these things with his performance in the drills. Had a super fast 40 time, ran just over 5 seconds. And then you look at the RAS score. And it's kind of shocking to me because I always looked at him as a guy who's not really like sexy in the way he plays or anything. I mean, there's some cool plays, but he's more so like just a reliable player, right? He's been good his whole time in college. Never really been a bad player, but he's never been like borderline elite or anything like that. But then you see some of this, you're like, okay, well, he runs super fast now. He's down to 322, which really, I think, helps him. Like, if he wants to project into what Jacksonville does, being more of a mover, more of that kind of scheme where you're going to go on poles and do different stuff. And so I think Cooper Beebe is even more of a fit. Definitely going to change from being a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. That's a number I'll have to update. But very interesting performance from him because I think he did really well in the things he could control. But obviously, arm size and hands, it's not ideal. But it is what it is. And it doesn't change the way I look at Cooper Beebe. I think he's a really good player. I think he's going to be reliable for someone. I think he should go probably in the second round of the draft this year. Now, I got 2 guys I'm going to talk about next that, they were late first rounders for me, early second rounders, and arguably both players could end up going before Jacksonville picks. And the first one of those is Amarius Mims, who coming in, I had him ranked 10th. He's a younger prospect. He's been really good when he's played. I want to note that. But the issue is that when you look at the amount of snaps he's totaled over 3 years, he's played 800 snaps. And it's not like he played, 100, 100, and 600, and got most of a season in. The most snaps he's played is less than 400 in every season he's played. That's the big issue. But what he did coming into the combine is they confirmed a lot of these freaky numbers, all right? I mean, let's look at this. His hands, 11.25 inches. It is the biggest that we have of every player on my big board. Now, I believe there was another offensive lineman who came close. I don't remember the name. He might have even had him beat. But these are just insane numbers. And you look at the height, nearly 6'8". Now, Joe Alt had him beat. We'll talk about him later. But really good stuff here. 36-inch arms and a wingspan that is well over 7 feet. You get all these things you throw together. He managed to run really close to 5 seconds in the 40-yard dash. And the RAS score is going to be really high because of that. I mean, everything that Mims could do out there, he did very, very well. And he comes in at 340 pounds doing this. I got to note that for you as well. This is a big guy who moves quick and has performed really well throughout his career when he's on the field. If there is a team at the top of the draft that says, you know what, we can look past the injuries, we can pick this guy, he's going to go early. It takes one team to do that. So Marius Mims, I mean, don't be shocked if he's gone by 17. I think he's got every tool that you're going to look for. And this is a guy that, I mean, you think about how much upside there is, how much growth there is. He's already a good football player. You just need him to stay healthy. So, it just depends how teams see that, because obviously, playing less than 400 snaps in every season is a major concern for him. Now, next guy, who's got a little bit different of an issue, J.C. Latham. Had him ranked just ahead of him. Now, Latham, he is a little bit shorter. Same size overall, though. But you see the measurements. I mean, a lot of the same thing. Not as freaky, but really close still. He didn't run the drills or anything, but I think what he did coming in was he showed that a lot of the reason to believe in him, a lot of that upside is actually there. You see consistently at the combine where players will come in, they'll be nowhere near what they're supposed to be as far as measurements. And so when you have a player who just does what they're expected to do, it's a pretty big deal. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is, And you even had this year 2 players who abstained from taking measurements, those being Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels. And I hope that's not a trend that starts, because I am 100% sure those numbers are getting fudged at their pro days. I do not think they're going to be realistic at all. So, I mean, just to see Latham come in, point is, having these measurements where they're legit, they're taken by people who aren't going to be biased, not your own school, it confirms a lot of what you want to see with them. And so, instead of it being a question of injuries, like it is for Mims, it's more so now, can you get past the penalties? Can you clean them up? He had 11 penalties in 2022. And other than that, I mean, he's a pretty consistent player. He's pretty good. I mean, this is another guy, like, you could justify him as an early first-round player. I mean, you could even put him in the top 10 if you want. Just if you can get by that, I mean, the highs, they're so high. This guy is sky-high potential. So I really liked what I saw from him. Confirm the things that you want to see, right? Now, the next guy, Zach Frazier. I want to tell you something here. Hand size. Nearly 11 inches. Do you know how close the next center prospect is to 11 inches? Or just a matching Zach Frazier's size? The next closest guy, Dominic Puny, if you want him to move inside. So you can't even necessarily count him. I mean, this guy is 3/4 of an inch smaller in hand size. That's a lot. I mean, for the measurements and how much disparity we get, overall we had probably about not even a 3-inch range. I mean, that's how much bigger it is for Zach Frazier. And it makes sense when you watch the film, because when you watch Frazier, I think the thing that stands out the most is his ability to basically just tell pass rushers where they're going to go. He gets his hands on you. He pushes you wherever he wants to. And I've seen it a lot where someone will engage with him and he will just push him into another rusher. And he will literally eliminate 2 people at once. I mean, this guy is a good football player coming in, right? All really good stuff. He comes in with good measurements, especially for the hands. I know the wingspan, obviously, it's in the red, right? But he's a center. This is where you play if you have that kind of size. So it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We look at like Jackson Powers Johnson, I think it's the exact same number, right? So, I mean, you can survive with that. That's not the end of the world. But this guy showed toughness, interviewed really well. The thing you go back to is watching him basically try to bear crawl across the field to keep the offense from having to use a timeout when he got hurt. He's a badass. This guy is a certified badass. And if I'm looking to trade up in the second round for a guy, Zach Frazier's probably the top one. Realistically, out of who's going to be there, this is the guy that I want on my football team. I wouldn't take him at 17. I think that's a little too early, but he's going to be a back end of the first round guy for me. Probably won't go there because you have Jackson Powers Johnson, Graham Barden. Even some teams might have like Christian Haynes up there for all we know. So Zach Frazier, he had a really good day, I think, with measurements and showing off just this incredible hand size. And then, just hitting the parameters for the position, right? Like solid size. We saw some people who got down almost like 300. So, yeah, 313 is pretty good for a center. It's pretty big. So, really liked what I saw there. Now, I've got 3 more guys for you. These are going to be my top 3 guys heading in, right? Talise Fuaga. He came in a lot lighter than expected, right? He was supposed to be like, 335 pounds, I think, at the Senior Bowl. Trimmed down a bunch for this event. Ends up being about 6'6". Big hands, not as big as some other tackles, but still pretty good size. Ends up actually having bigger hands than the 2 guys above him. And the arm length in the wingspan, it's kind of intriguing to me because it's not that it's not ideal, but I don't think it's really a positive either, right? I mean, he's right at the threshold. Like, we talk about these pass rushers, they got to hit 33 inches, right? If he's going up against those players, he is going to be about as average as it gets when it gets to those sizes. So it really justifies to me why I want to see him move inside, because you pair this concern with some of the questions about his mobility. He doesn't always kick out and block people. Maybe the anticipation's a little off. I think this guy could be one of the best guards in the NFL if he plays inside. And so I really want to see that. These numbers confirm that for me. We'll see what teams do. I'm sure someone's going to give him a chance to tackle. But if it was me, I'd be playing him at guard. Now, interesting enough, I just want to show you where he ranks on this 40-yard dash. So, he's supposed to be a bigger guy, right? He comes in. Actually, I think I missed him here. He is struggling to see him here. There we go. Okay. Comes in basically around middle of the pack. And I know that's not this incredible thing, right? You don't want to see him, be terrible or just be average. But for what he's supposed to be built, the questions about mobility, I think it's still good. I think 5'13" or whatever he ran ends up being fine. So that's all good, but this is a player, I think he's got to move inside to guard realistically. I think that's his best spot. We'll see what teams do. Like I said, I expect him to play tackle to start, but that's how I view him. I don't think that's going to change from this point on. Doesn't mean he's any less of a prospect either, because I think coming into the NFL and being a potentially elite guard, that's still worth a ton in the draft. I mean, we saw Quentin Nelson go, 5th or 6th? And I don't know if he's that good of a prospect, but we're talking about something kind of similar. So I still think Fuaga deserves to go probably right around 10, somewhere in that range. Now, 2 more guys. Gonna talk about Olu Fashanu, probably just for a moment. Ended up kind of being average on most things. Now, it's still fine. It's not like there's numbers that are, absolutely terrible or damning. The one that comes the closest is definitely the hand size. This is actually technically smaller than Kenny Pickett's hands. That is a horrible thing for me to have to say, but that is where he landed. Now, is hand size the end of the world? Not necessarily, but if you have big hands, it helps you line up blocks. It helps you do better as a blocker. And so I have some concerns about that. He has to become one of these players who can overcome that. Especially if I want him to move people in the run game, which is where he wants to grow. I think having smaller hands really hurts that a bit. And so it's a bit of a concern for me. Not the end of the world. Still has pretty good overall size. I do think that at the end of this process, though, it's very possible Fashanu is not offensive tackle too, which feels crazy to say after we started this whole process with him being the clear number one, getting overtaken by Joe Alt slowly over time, and then now we're talking about other guys like, maybe even Latham and Mims, if you can get past their concerns, might be just as complete of, if not better players. So Fashanu, most of it's fine, right? But I'm a little concerned about the hand size. He didn't really blow me out of the water like I wanted to see from him to justify battling it out with Joe Alt. I think he's firmly behind him at this point, and we'll see where he ends once we do reevaluations and everything we need to do. Now, let's finish it off on the best of the best, right? Joe Alt, out of Notre Dame. Comes in, 21 years old, already knew that, but nearly 6'9". He has 321 pounds on him, which I think is a really good weight when you're talking about his extra size on his frame. I mean, he's 6'9", right? Like, he's probably got to be a bit heavier because there's more frame to fill out. Comes in with 10-inch hands. I mean, that's kind of average. It's fine, though. Good arm size, solid wingspan. A lot of things that are really nice to him, though. And he is a complete prospect coming into this, right? But he did really well in the drills, too. I mean, he ran one of the fastest 40 times that we had. I mean, you could see him up here at a 5:05. Ends up going towards the top. One of the best tackle performances that we had. Ends up getting a 991 as his RAS score, which is really good. About as high as you're going to get. So I liked what I saw of Joe Alt. Maybe not every number is just incredible. It's not like an Amarius Mims kind of build. But this guy is a complete prospect. I think doing this well should lock up OT1 for Joe Alt. And honestly, if I had to guess where he went right now, it's got to be the Titans or it's got to be the Jets, right? It depends on if receivers are there for the Titans, who they fall in love with, all that stuff. But they got to take Alt. I would think if there's not one of those top three receivers available. And for the Jets, this is the guy. I don't know how you say no if he's there on the board. So he's got to be top 10. He's one of the best prospects. He's going to be either probably 5th or 6th for me on my big board at the end of the day. Really good player, though, just confirming the things that we already know. And I want to note as well, talk about this 5:05. This guy used to play tight end. That's a big reason for why he performed that well. So you got to love what you see with Joe Alt. Now, that's it for the Combine. That's all of our information we got, all the drills, all the measurements. I've got to rework through my big board. My next video that I plan, we're going to be doing a mock draft, going to be doing our third one of the off season. I am waiting right now for something like PFF to update, because right now everything's kind of wacky. We have players falling that just should not be falling, right? Dallas Turner is available almost every single draft. He should not be available almost every single draft. So I'm waiting until it's updated based off Combine results so we can get a little bit more of a realistic outcome. We're not just making picks that make no sense. But I'm going to rework on my big board, going to reevaluate some players, and hopefully have something really good to show you guys for Wednesday. But that's all I've got today. Hope you guys enjoyed the Combine. We're going to have a lot of stuff coming out here soon, especially regarding free agency. Just want to wrap up with the draft here, and then we're going to be looking at free agent fits. Going to be looking at the signings. We just got, actually, our first news of the offseason for Jacksonville, which I will probably talk about in a short or mention in a future video. But regards, full runs Fatukasi. I'm sure we'll see more moves. But that's all I've got, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.